I need a beautiful wife, and you need a rich husband, said the cold millionaire to the runaway bride. The tinted window slid down to reveal Ethan Cross, the city's coldest and most feared millionaire, a man known for closing billion-dollar deals without blinking. His gaze swept over her from head to toe before he said, I need a beautiful wife, and you need a rich husband. Have you ever been in a situation where you have to give something in exchange for the life you desire? Hi viewers, kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Warm welcome to the family. Enjoy the story in the middle of Dallas, Texas. Headlights illuminated a lone figure in a white dress, barefoot and drenched from the storm. Olivia had just sprinted out of her wedding reception, heart pounding, veil torn, and makeup streaked from tears. She thought she was escaping disaster until a black Rolls-Royce Phantom pulled up beside her. The tinted window slid down to reveal Ethan Cross, the city's coldest and most feared millionaire, a man known for closing billion-dollar deals without blinking. His gaze swept over her from head to toe before he said, I need a beautiful wife, and you need a rich husband. Rain pounded against her already soaked dress as she stared at him, wondering if she'd lost her mind. Was she hallucinating this impossibly powerful man appearing out of nowhere like some dark fairy tale? Excuse me? Her voice cracked, barely audible over the storm. You're running from something, he stated, not a question. I'm offering a solution that benefits us both. A car sped past, splashing water that soaked her legs again. She didn't even flinch. She was already drenched to the bone, inside and out. Why would you want to marry a stranger? She asked, hugging herself against the chill. His eyes, cold blue, calculating, assessed her like a commodity. My father's will requires I marry within 30 days, or I lose control of Cross Enterprises to my cousin. You need to disappear. I need a wife who understands business arrangements. Get in the car, and we can discuss terms. Lightning cracked overhead, illuminating his sharp features and the leather interior behind him. Every instinct screamed danger, but the headlights approaching from the direction of the church glowed brighter in her peripheral vision. Sometimes safety meant choosing between different kinds of danger. She climbed in, wedding dress billowing around her like a deflated dream. The door closed with a soft click that somehow sounded like a lock engaging. I'll need guarantees, she said, surprising herself with how steady her voice sounded. One eyebrow arched slightly, perhaps the only indication he was capable of surprise. Smart girl, you'll have them. As the car door closed behind her, sealing them in leather-scented darkness, his voice cut through the silence. 3 rules. No falling in love. No questions about my past. And when this ends, because it will end, you disappear completely. What Olivia didn't know was that by morning, her face would be splashed across every gossip site in America, with a diamond on her finger worth more than everything she'd ever owned. Have you ever made a split-second decision that changed your entire life? What would you do if escape meant trading one dangerous situation for another? Some choices come once in a lifetime, when desperation meets opportunity in the rain. For Olivia, that moment of decision would lead her into a world of wealth and power she'd never imagined. But wealth attracts enemies. Power creates targets, and arrangements made in desperation rarely stay simple. The man beside her wasn't looking for love. He was looking for leverage. His late father's will demanded he marry within 30 days or lose control of the Cross family fortune to a ruthless cousin in Houston. Olivia's runaway status made her perfect. No family questions, no messy emotional ties, and no history that could be weaponized against him. What Ethan didn't count on was that Olivia had her own reasons for accepting. The man she left at the altar wasn't just unfaithful, he was dangerous, and wouldn't stop until she was back under his control. Sometimes the most dangerous choice is the safest one available. Sometimes a stranger's cold blue eyes offer more protection than familiar arms. Sometimes running away leads you exactly where you need to be. She signed her name on the contract with steady hands, trading her freedom for protection from the man she'd left behind, never suspecting that her new husband had enemies far more dangerous. Ethan's penthouse occupied the top 2 floors of Cross Tower, a gleaming spire of steel and glass that dominated the Dallas skyline. Everything about the space screamed wealth and emptiness. Minimalist furniture in shades of gray and black, art worth millions displayed like trophies rather than treasures, and windows that transformed the city below into a carpet of distant lights. "Read it carefully," Ethan said, sliding the contract across his desk. "Once you sign, there's no going back." The document outlined everything: their 30-day marriage, her compensation, and the ironclad confidentiality agreement that would follow their divorce. Clean, clinical controlled. Olivia scanned the pages, surprised to find herself calm. After running from her wedding, after the chaos of emotions that had driven her into the storm, this cold transaction felt almost peaceful. $7 million upon divorce? She asked, looking up at him. "Fair price for a convincing performance," he replied, pouring 2 glasses of amber liquor. "My family has cameras everywhere. My cousin spies, too. We'll need to be convincing." She took the glass he offered, their fingers brushing briefly. A strange current passed between them, surprising them both. "I don't need your money after this ends," she said, crossing out the settlement clause. "I just need your silence." The pen hovered above the signature line as their eyes locked. "And your word that he'll never find me." Something flickered in his expression. Respect, maybe, or recognition. "Who exactly are you running from?" he asked. "That will be a question about my past," she countered, using his own rules against him. A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "Touché." He leaned forward, crossing out several more clauses. "No financial settlement. Instead, I'll provide new identity documents and relocation anywhere in the world after our divorce." Olivia nodded, studying his face. Ethan Cross was undeniably handsome in that sharp, dangerous way of men who'd never been told no. Dark hair cut precisely, jaw always freshly shaved, clothes that cost more than cars. But it was his eyes that held her attention, blue as deep water and just as likely to drown you. "Do we have a deal, Miss Bennett? Or should I say, Mrs. Cross?" She signed without hesitation. He followed suit, then raised his glass. "To mutually beneficial arrangements." They drank, sealing their contract in something stronger than ink. Later, he showed her to the guest suite, a room larger than her entire apartment, with views that made Dallas look like a kingdom she'd somehow inherited. "The staff arrives at 7, he said from the doorway. "We'll need to work on our story before they get here." "How do we meet? Fall in love? Why the rush?" she asked, sitting on the edge of the bed. "Keep it simple. Truth adjacent. We met at a charity event 6 months ago. Kept it private. Decided life's too short after a recent health scare in your family." She nodded, mentally rehearsing the lie. "And the rings. My jeweler arrives at 8. He hesitated, then added, "Choose whatever you want. It needs to make a statement. Would you sign away 30 days of your life to a stranger if it meant escaping your past? What would your non-negotiables be?" Sometimes the safest hiding place is in plain sight, on the arm of a man everyone's too afraid to question. She was halfway through unpacking in the guest suite when her phone pinged with a message from an unknown number. "You can run from one man to another, but you can't outrun what you saw that night." Her suitcase slipped from suddenly numb fingers. How'd he found her already? The cameras caught their first kiss before they'd even practiced it. 37 million views a moment that felt unexpectedly real to them both. "Smile like I've just promised you the world," Ethan murmured, his hand warm against the small of her back as they exited the jewelry store. Paparazzi swarmed like sharks, scenting blood, camera flashes creating a strobe effect that made Olivia dizzy. For 3 days, they'd rehearsed their love story in the privacy of his penthouse. Now came the performance. "Mr. Cross, is it true you're engaged? When's the wedding? Who's the mystery woman?" Ethan pulled her closer, his expression softening in a way she hadn't seen before. "This is the woman I'm going to spend my life with," he announced, looking down at her with convincing adoration. Then his lips were on hers, a kiss meant for cameras that sent unexpected heat coursing through her body. His hand cradled her face with surprising gentleness, and for just a moment, Olivia forgot this was pretend. She kissed him back with genuine emotion. Not love, but gratitude, relief, and something else she couldn't name. When they parted, the look of surprise in his eyes mirrored her own. That should satisfy them, he whispered, leading her toward the waiting car. By evening, they were trending on every social platform. Hashtag cross in love. Hashtag whirlwind romance. Hashtag richest bachelor. You're a natural, Ethan said, reviewing the coverage on his tablet. The public loves you. Olivia studied herself on the screen. A stranger wearing a 4-carat emerald ring, designer clothes, and a smile that looked almost real. They loved the fantasy. The flagship cross department store transformed overnight into a cathedral of white flowers and crystal. Their love story, manufactured between conference calls and panic attacks. Olivia learned to play her part perfectly, the blushing bride, the devoted fiancé, the perfect companion. She studied his habits, preferences, and mannerisms like final exams, determined to convince even the most skeptical observer. But sometimes, when he thought no one was watching, she caught him looking at her with genuine curiosity, as if she were a puzzle he couldn't solve. During her wedding dress fitting, he surprised her by attending personally. "Too much?" she asked as she emerged in a gown that cost more than a luxury car. His eyes tracked slowly from the sweetheart neckline to the fitted waist, lingering just long enough to make her skin warm beneath the expensive fabric. "Perfect," he said, voice slightly rougher than usual. "It reminds me of how you looked the night we met, minus the rain." The designer fussed with the train, oblivious to the charged moment passing between them. "Have you ever faked something so well you started to wonder if it was real?" Drop a red heart if you've experienced that confusing moment when pretense starts feeling genuine. For Olivia and Ethan, the lines were blurring faster than either would admit. Each public appearance, each rehearsed touch, each shared secret pushed them closer to dangerous territory, the no man's land between contract and connection. The wedding invitations had barely been mailed when the first thread arrived. A white rose dipped in what looked like blood, with a card that read, "I know what this marriage really is. The question is, does he know what you really are?" Olivia stared at the flower, heart hammering against her ribs. The handwriting wasn't her ex-fiancé's. This was someone else, someone closer to Ethan's world than hers. She should tell him. Their arrangement depended on honesty about threats. But telling him would mean admitting what she'd been running from. The ledger she'd seen, the names listed inside, the blood money flowing through legitimate businesses, including possibly his own. She said, "I do," with a smile that fooled everyone except the man, sliding the ring on her finger. He saw the terror hiding behind her eyes because he recognized it from his own mirror. The cathedral echoed with music played by a string quartet flown in for Vienna. Roses worth more than her father's truck lined the aisle, where she floated in a cloud of white silk and lace. 500 guests watched with envy and admiration as Dallas's most eligible bachelor pledged himself to a woman who'd appeared from nowhere. "You're trembling," Ethan whispered as he slid the platinum band onto her finger. "Just playing my part," she whispered back, though they both knew it was a lie. 3 rows back, a man she didn't recognize studied them with cold intensity. Not her ex, but someone equally dangerous, someone from Ethan's world, not hers. The threats had continued, white roses appearing in her dressing room, her car, even her morning coffee cup. When a minister pronounced them husband and wife, Ethan kissed her with practiced tenderness that still managed to send electricity down her spine. The applause washed over them like a wave, carrying them back down the aisle and into their new shared reality. The reception blurred into a kaleidoscope of champagne, camera flashes, and congratulations from people whose names she'd memorized from photographs but never expected to meet. Senators, oil barons, tech billionaires, all raising glasses to a marriage built on paper and pretense. "You're doing wonderfully," Ethan murmured during their first dance, his hand warm against her back as he guided her in smooth circles. "Just a few more hours. Then what?" she asked, suddenly aware of how close they stood, how his eyes reflected the crystal chandeliers above them. "Then we go home," he said simply, Home, as if they shared one. As if this wasn't a business transaction with an expiration date. Night fell, and they retreated to the presidential suite of his flagship hotel. Olivia stood at the window, watching the city lights, while Ethan spoke quietly on the phone in the other room. Her wedding dress pulled around her feet like spent dreams, replaced by silk pajamas laid out by some nameless staff member. When he entered, he'd changed as well. Designer tuxedo traded for black lounge pants and a gray t-shirt that made him look almost normal, almost approachable. "Security's in place," he said, pouring 2 glasses of champagne. "We're safe here, are we?" She accepted the glass, their fingers brushing. "Someone knows, Ethan, about us, about this arrangement." He nodded, face grim. "I'm handling it. How? By keeping you close." He studied her over the rim of his glass. "Whoever's sending those flowers wants to separate us, make us doubt each other." Thunder rumbled outside, matching the storm building in her chest. "There are 2 bedrooms, she said, changing the subject. "As per our agreement." "Yes." His eyes never left hers. "Unless." The question hung between them, electric and dangerous. "Unless what?" she whispered, heart racing. His hand cupped her face with surprising gentleness, thumb tracing her lower lip as if memorizing its shape. "Just for the cameras," he whispered, but his dilated pupils told a different story as he lowered his mouth to hers. This kiss was different from their public performances. Slower, deeper, a question rather than a statement. When they separated, both were breathing harder than before. "Good night, Olivia," he said, stepping back with visible reluctance. "Lock your door." What's more intimate, sharing your body or sharing your fears? Tell me below which you think forms a deeper connection. For Olivia and Ethan, both remained carefully guarded as they retreated to separate rooms, the ghost of their kiss lingering between them. She woke at 3 a.m. to find him standing at her bedroom window, phone clutched in a white-knuckled grip. "Pack a bag," he said without turning. "Someone just broke into my father's mausoleum. We're not safe here anymore." His face in the darkness looked stripped of all pretense. Not the billionaire CEO or the charming groom, but a man facing enemies he couldn't control. For the first time, Olivia saw real fear in Ethan Cross's eyes, and it terrified her how much she wanted to erase it. The safe house had 3 bedrooms, but thunder drove them to the same one. Fear and attraction creating a chemistry neither had calculated for. 2 hours from Dallas, Ethan's lake house rose from misty shores like something from another century. Stone and timber standing defiant against approaching storm clouds. Security personnel patrolled the perimeter while Olivia took in her surroundings. No neighbors for miles. No cell service. No escape route except the private road they'd driven in on. "My father built this place to be impenetrable," Ethan explained, typing a code into a hidden panel. Steel shutters whispered down over vulnerable windows. "No one knows we're here except my head of security." "You think that will stop them?" she asked, watching lightning reflect off the darkening lake. "No." His honesty surprised her. "But it buys us time to figure out who's behind this." The house interior contrasted with his sterile penthouse. Leather couches worn soft with use. Bookshelves filled with actual books instead of decorative objects. Family photos showing a younger, smiling Ethan with a woman who shared his eyes. "Your mother?" she asked, gesturing to the photo. Pain flashed across his face. "Yes, she died when I was 16. I'm sorry." The words felt inadequate, but his slight nod acknowledged them. As night fell, the storm intensified. Wind howled around corners while rain lashed against reinforced glass. Each thunderclap seemed to shake the foundation itself. Olivia jumped when a particularly violent crack of thunder coincided with the lights going out. "Backup generator will kick in," Ethan said from somewhere in the darkness. His hand found hers, warm and steady. "Come on, there's a safer room upstairs." He led her upstairs, illuminated only by occasional lightning flashes, their joined hands a tether in the darkness. The master bedroom contained a sitting area with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking the turbulent lake. "I thought we were closing shutters for safety," she said as he lit candles around the room. This side faces the water. No approach possible. He handed her a crystal tumbler of whiskey. Besides, I've always found storms calming. Calming? She raised an eyebrow. Most people find them threatening. I prefer threats I can see coming. He settled beside her on the window seat, close enough that she felt his warmth, but not so close their bodies touched. Unlike the ones we're facing now, the alcohol burned pleasantly down her throat, loosening something tight in her chest. My ex wasn't just unfaithful, she admitted, voice barely audible over rainfall. He was involved with people who eliminate problems permanently, and I became a problem the night I found the ledger. Ethan went completely still beside her. What ledger? Financial records, offshore accounts, names of people who shouldn't be connected. She stared into her glass. I was helping him organize files for our wedding announcement when I found it, hidden in a false drawer bottom. His hand froze on her shoulder as realization dawned. The missing financial records from Southwest Holdings, he whispered. That's what you saw. Their eyes met in half-light. Olivia, those documents wouldn't just implicate your ex. They destroy half the business elite in Texas, including my cousin. Have you ever told someone a secret you swore you'd take to your grave? What pushed you to finally share it? The moment when trust outweighs fear creates an intimacy that can't be manufactured, as Olivia discovered, watching understanding transform Ethan's expression. Lightning illuminated his face. No longer the cold businessman who'd offered her a contract, but a potential ally who suddenly understood exactly what she was running from. You have proof that would destroy the people trying to take my company, he said slowly. And they know you have it. I didn't take the ledger, she clarified. Just saw it. Memorized enough. Even worse. His fingers traced her cheek with unexpected tenderness. They can't let you live with what you know. She shivered despite the whiskey's warmth. Neither can your cousin, apparently. No. Ethan agreed, blue eyes intense in the candlelight. Which means we're not just protecting each other from separate enemies. We're facing the same one, she finished. From different directions. She'd married him for protection, but now she was the one protecting him from a truth that could shatter everything he'd built. The elevator climbed toward the executive floor of Cross Tower, numbers ticking upward as Olivia fought to keep her breathing even. Beside her, Ethan radiated cold confidence in a charcoal suit worth more than her car. Remember, he said quietly, these people have known me for years. They'll be watching for any sign that this marriage isn't real. I know how to act, Ethan. She straightened his already perfect tie, letting her fingers linger against his chest. I'm not the one who looks terrified. His eyes narrowed, but a reluctant smile tugged at his mouth. I'm not terrified. I'm focused. Focused on not looking terrified. She winked as the doors opened, immediately adopting the expression of a woman deeply in love with her powerful husband. The Cross Tower boardroom stretched before them like a battlefield. 20 executives in tailored suits watching their every move, searching for the weakness that would signal the beginning of the end. At the far end sat Victor Cross, Ethan's cousin, heir presumptive, and the man who stood to gain everything if their marriage proved false. The happy couple returns, Victor announced, rising from his chair with a smile that never reached his eyes. How was the honeymoon? Abbreviated. Ethan replied coolly, his hand at Olivia's back, guiding her to seats at the head of the table. Someone broke into my father's mausoleum while we were celebrating our marriage. Hardly seems coincidental. Olivia studied Victor as whispers circulated around the table. Tall, blonde, with the same crossed jawline as Ethan, but none of his intensity. Where Ethan radiated control, Victor exuded charm, the kind that made you want to check your pockets afterward. Disturbing news, Victor said, shaking his head. Any leads on who might have done such a thing? Several, Ethan replied, opening his portfolio. But we're not here to discuss cemetery security. We're here to review first quarter projections. For the next hour, Olivia watched her husband command the room with quiet authority, navigating complex financial discussions while subtly undermining his cousin's attempts to seize control. She noted which board members leaned toward Victor and which remained loyal to Ethan, cataloging potential threats and allies. when discussion turned to Southwest Holdings, the company her ex-fiancé worked for. She kept her expression neutral despite her racing heart. "The merger makes sense on paper," Victor was saying, "but their recent leadership issues concern me." "What leadership issues?" Olivia asked, speaking for the first time. All eyes turned to her, with varying degrees of surprise and condescension. Victor recovered first. "Just business matters, my dear. Nothing for you to worry about. My wife has excellent business instincts." Ethan interjected smoothly. "I'd be interested in her perspective." Olivia smiled, channeling every ounce of confidence she didn't feel. Southwest Holdings has been hiding significant losses for at least 3 quarters. Their executive team is involved in multiple ventures that would constitute conflicts of interest if publicly disclosed, and their Asian expansion exists primarily on paper. She sipped her water calmly. Not exactly the kind of company Cross Enterprises should align with. Silence descended on the boardroom. Victor's face flushed red while Ethan regarded her with genuine admiration. "And how exactly would you know all this?" Victor asked, voice tight with suppressed anger. "My previous fiancée worked in their finance department," she replied with practiced casualness. Pillow talk can be quite informative. Ethan ended the meeting shortly after, citing other appointments. In a private elevator heading to his office, he finally allowed himself to laugh. "That was either incredibly brave or monumentally reckless," he said, loosening his tie. "Maybe both." She leaned against the elevator wall, adrenaline still coursing through her veins. "Did you see his face?" "I saw 20 faces wondering how I found a wife who could dismantle my cousin's pet project in 3 sentences." The elevator doors opened directly into his office suite. He backed her against the door as soon as it closed behind them, one hand sliding into her hair as the other traced the curve of her hip. "Tell me to stop," he demanded against her throat. She answered by pulling him closer, her body making promises her mind wasn't ready to keep. "When does an arrangement start feeling like something real? Is it physical attraction, or the moment someone stands beside you when they could walk away?" For Ethan and Olivia, the line between pretense and reality blurred further with each passing day. His phone buzzed with a security alert as they straightened their clothes. The blood drained from his face as he showed her the screen. Someone had accessed her old apartment, leaving behind wedding photos with her eyes scratched out and 3 words scrawled in red. "I'm still waiting." At the charity gala, she played the perfect wife while counting exits and cataloging threats, until she realized the most dangerous person in the room was the man whose ring she wore. Crystal chandeliers threw fractured light across the ballroom of the Crescent Hotel, illuminating Dallas society in their finest evening wear. Diamond-draped women circled Olivia like curious sharks, probing for weaknesses in her suddenly elevated status. Such a whirlwind romance, cooed a silver-haired woman whose name badge identified her as the chairwoman. "How did you and Ethan meet again?" "Charity event last fall," Olivia replied, the practice live flowing smoothly. "We kept it private until we were certain." "Certain of what, dear?" Olivia smiled, channeling the confidence Ethan had helped her cultivate. "Certain that what we found was worth sharing with the world." Across the room, Ethan commanded attention without effort, his tailored tuxedo setting him apart from men who'd spent equal fortunes to look half as polished. He caught her eye, raising his glass slightly in acknowledgement. The gesture wasn't for show. No one was watching them in that moment, which made the warmth it triggered in her chest all the more confusing. When the orchestra began playing, he appeared at her side, hand extended. "May I have this dance, Mrs. Cross?" On the dance floor, his hand at her waist guided her with practiced ease. "You're managing the wolves beautifully," he murmured, just loud enough for her to hear. "Years of customer service prepared me for fake smiles and loaded questions," she replied, noticing how perfectly they moved together. "Though none of my retail customers implied I trapped you with pregnancy." His eyebrow arched. "Who said that?" "The redhead by the bar. Mrs. Whitfield." "Ah." His lips twitched. "Her daughter was on my potential suitable wives list according to several matchmaking mothers." "Should I be worried?" she teased, surprising herself with the ease between them. About Caroline Whitfield? God, no. She collects designer handbags and calls it a personality. Olivia laughed, drawing curious glances from nearby couples. The sound was genuine, unplanned, and unrehearsed, and Ethan's expression softened in response. You should do that more often, he said, spinning her gently. What? Laugh at your exes? Just laugh. His eyes held hers. It suits you. The moment shattered when a striking blonde in a backless gown approached, her smile sharp as broken glass. Ethan, darling, marriage agrees with you. She air-kissed his cheek, then turned ice-blue eyes on Olivia. And you must be the bride no one saw coming. Rebecca Sinclair. Ethan and I are old friends. The emphasis on friends couldn't have been clearer if she'd used air quotes. Lovely to meet you, Olivia replied, extending her hand. Any friend of Ethan's. Rebecca's grip was crushing. Friends might be generous. Complicated history is more accurate. She turned back to Ethan. Your cousin was just saying how surprising this quick marriage is, given your tendencies. Ethan's jaw tightened. Victor should focus more on quarterly reports and less on my personal life. Hard to do when they become so intertwined. Rebecca's gaze flickered to Olivia's rings. Enjoy the honeymoon phase, darling. It passes quickly with men who need control. She drifted away, leaving a chill in her wake. Have you ever discovered something about someone you were falling for that made you question everything? How did you decide whether to trust your head or your heart? For Olivia, the question became unavoidable when Rebecca cornered her in the ladies' room 20 minutes later. He'll hurt you, Rebecca said, reapplying lipstick in a mirror. Not physically. Ethan's too careful for that. But he'll break you in other ways. You don't know anything about us, Olivia replied, fighting to maintain composure. I know he put his last girlfriend in the hospital. Rebecca's reflection met Olivia's eyes. I know he can't tolerate being contradicted or questioned. And I know you're not the first woman he's used as a business strategy. The car ride home stretched with silence until she finally whispered, Did you really put your last girlfriend in the hospital? His knuckles whitened on the steering wheel. No, he said without looking at her. But I know who did and why they want you to believe it was me. She gave him 24 hours to tell her everything or end their arrangement. Not realizing his darkest truth would explain why he'd chosen her that rainy night. Rain lashed against panoramic windows as lightning illuminated his face in stark relief, each flash revealing another layer of pain he'd buried beneath success and control. They sat in his home office, the contract that had bound them spread on the table between them like a battle line neither would cross. I didn't hurt Rebecca, Ethan said, pouring himself a third whiskey. But my cousin did. Olivia sat perfectly still, waiting. The ultimatum she delivered after the gala hung between them. Complete honesty or immediate dissolution of their arrangement, regardless of the consequences. Rebecca and I dated briefly 3 years ago. When I ended things, she moved on to Victor. His voice remained steady, but his knuckles whitened around his glass. I didn't know he had a violent streak until her accident. What accident? Supposedly, she fell downstairs at his lake house. Broken arm, concussion, bruised ribs. His jaw clenched. I visited her in the hospital. She wouldn't admit what really happened, but I knew. I threatened Victor, told him I'd destroy him if he ever touched her again. And Olivia pressed. And 2 weeks later, my father died unexpectedly. Heart attack, they said, but he just passed his executive physical with flying colors. Ethan finally met her eyes. The night before he died, he told me he was changing his will to remove Victor from succession completely. Understanding dawned cold and clear. You think Victor killed your father? I know he did. Ethan set down his glass with careful precision. But knowing and proving are different things. So my father's will stood, including the marriage clause Victor thought would be impossible for me to fulfill. Until I ran into your path, Olivia said softly. Until you ran into my path, he agreed. A woman with secrets of her own, desperate enough to marry a stranger, smart enough to understand the arrangement. Lightning flashed again, illuminating the growing storm outside that matched the one in Olivia's chest. Everything about their situation had shifted, not just an arrangement of mutual convenience, but a battleground where much more than money and reputation were at stake. Victor's partners with Southwest Holdings, she realized aloud. With my ex. Yes. Ethan's eyes never left hers. When I saw you running in that wedding dress, I recognized the look on your face. It's the same one I see in the mirror. Someone hunted, someone who discovered something they were never meant to know. So this isn't just about your inheritance. It never was. He moved around the desk, kneeling before her chair, so they were eye to eye. It's about justice for my father. And now, protection for you. Rain drummed against the windows as they regarded each other in new light. Not business partners or pretend lovers, but allies against a common enemy. One who wouldn't hesitate to destroy them both. If we walk away now, she said carefully, cancel this arrangement. Victor wins everything. Ethan finished. And your ex finds you within days. The realization settled like stone in her stomach. They were trapped together now. Their fates intertwined beyond any contract's parameters. There's something else you should know, he said, voice dropping lower. Something I haven't told anyone. He rolled up his sleeve, revealing a jagged scar running from wrist to elbow. The night my mother died, when I was 16, it wasn't an accident either. Home invasion, they called it. I tried to protect her and got this. She wasn't as lucky. Olivia traced the scar with trembling fingers, understanding now why he hid it. You think Victor? He was 19, already showing signs of the man he'd become. Ethan's voice remained steady, but she felt the slight tremor beneath her fingertips. No proof, just the beginning of a pattern. What's more powerful? A connection built on shared success or shared trauma? Tell me in the comments which creates a stronger bond. For Olivia, the question answered itself as she looked at this man she'd married for convenience, now revealed as someone who understood her fear better than anyone could. She traced the scar on his shoulder with trembling fingers, understanding now why he hid it. You survived, she whispered against his skin. So did I, when his mouth found hers. Wasn't part of their contract or performance. It was two broken people recognizing themselves in each other. Hours later, tangled in sheets, still warm from their bodies, she reached for her buzzing phone. The message froze her blood. A photo of them through the bedroom window, taken minutes ago, with text that read, "He can't protect what he can't see coming. Tomorrow ends everything." 26 days into their 30-day marriage, they stopped pretending it was temporary. Right before everything they built came crashing down. The private jet lifted through storm clouds into stark sunlight, a perfect metaphor for how she'd begun to see their future. Darkness behind, light ahead, if they could just survive the turbulence between. Ethan sat across from her, phone pressed to his ear as he coordinated their counteroffensive. The photograph sent to Olivia's phone had changed everything. Their enemies weren't just watching, they were closing in, preparing to strike. After a night of strategy and preparation, they boarded Ethan's jet at dawn, putting their plan into motion. "Security teams in position," he said, ending the call. Victor took the bait. "Am I ex?" Olivia asked, fighting to keep her voice steady. "Boarded a flight to Houston an hour ago. Exactly where we want him." Ethan reached across the narrow aisle, taking her hand. "Are you sure about this? There's still time to get you to safety while I handle them." She interlaced her fingers with his, drawing strength from the connection. "We do this together or not at all. I'm done running." The transformation in her still surprised him. The frightened bride who'd climbed into his car that rainy night, now replaced by a woman of formidable determination. Her intelligence had impressed his board. Her resilience had earned his security team's respect. And somewhere between contract signing and crisis planning, she'd captured something he'd thought long buried, his heart. "What are you thinking?" she asked, noticing his intense gaze. "That you're nothing like I expected." His thumb traced circles on her palm. "And everything I never knew I needed." 26 days. Less than a month of marriage built on paper and pretense that had somehow transformed into something neither had anticipated. "This stopped being an arrangement the moment you ran into that board meeting to warn me," he admitted, forehead pressed to hers. I just didn't have the courage to tell you. Their plan was carefully calculated. Use the ledger information Olivia had memorized to set a trap, gathering evidence that would destroy Victor and her ex simultaneously. The private investigator they'd hired had compiled enough proof of conspiracy to interest federal prosecutors. All they needed now was to catch Victor accessing the fake offshore account they created. The jet touched down in Houston under clearing skies. A sleek black SUV waited on the tarmac. Ethan's most trusted security lead at the wheel. "All set at the hotel, sir," the man reported as they climbed in. "Surveillance is active. Your cousin arrived 30 minutes ago for his secret meeting." "And our federal friends?" Ethan asked. "Standing by. They'll move once the transaction goes through." Olivia squeezed Ethan's hand, adrenaline coursing through her veins. After weeks of running, hiding, and pretending, they were finally taking control. Fighting back. When did you realize business had become personal in your relationship? Was there a specific moment when everything changed? Share your story below. For Ethan and Olivia, that moment crystallized as they prepared to face their enemies together. Not as contractual partners, but as something far more powerful. The hotel suite they'd booked offered a direct view of the meeting room, where Victor and her ex-fiancée would soon discover they'd been outplayed. Ethan set up his laptop, establishing connection with their surveillance team. 5 minutes, he reported, checking his watch. "Ready," she nodded, stepping into his arms. The embrace held none of their earlier hesitation, just comfort, strength, and silent promises that extended far beyond their 30-day agreement. "After this is over," she began, but never finished the thought. The hotel room door splintered inward as armed men swarmed through. Her last sight before the world went black was Ethan lunging toward her, eyes wild with something that looked remarkably like love as the taser struck his chest. They took her to break him, never suspecting she'd already survived worse, or that the quiet wedding planner had learned a few things from her billionaire husband. The abandoned warehouse smelled of rust and harbor water, chains clanking against metal rafters as wind whistled through broken windows, a place where people disappeared without leaving echoes. Olivia tested her restraints again, wincing as the zip ties cut deeper into her wrists. Blood made her skin slippery, a disadvantage for her captors they hadn't considered. 3 men guarded her, though only one mattered. James Harlow, her ex-fiancé, the man she'd left standing at the altar. He paced before her, expensive shoes echoing on concrete. "You should have stayed where you belonged," he said, voice deceptively gentle. "All of this could have been avoided. By marrying you?" She laughed, the sound hollow in the cavernous space. "I'd rather die here." His hand struck her cheek with practiced precision, hard enough to hurt, not enough to mark visibly. A familiar pain that no longer frightened her. "That can be arranged," he replied, straightening his cuffs. "After Cross gives us what we want." Across the city, Ethan awoke in darkness, head throbbing where they'd struck him after the taser. The room was moving, a vehicle, probably a cargo van based on the empty space. 2 guards watched him with professional detachment, weapons ready. "Where is she?" he demanded, testing his own restraints. "Asking the wrong questions," replied the larger guard. "You should be wondering what your cousin wants from you." Victor's too much of a coward to ask directly. Ethan spat, mind racing through scenarios, calculating odds, searching for weaknesses. The guard shrugged. "Maybe, but he was smart enough to find your wife's ex. Turns out they both want the same things. Him wanting his runaway bride back, Victor wanting your company. Convenient partnership. Ice formed in Ethan's veins. 26 days ago, that information would have meant nothing to him beyond tactical disadvantage. Now it was everything. The thought of Olivia back in her abuser's hands made something primal and violent rise within him. "If he touches her," Ethan began. "You'll what?" The guard laughed. "You're not exactly in a position to make threats." But Ethan wasn't threatening. He was promising. In the warehouse, Olivia continued working the sharp metal fragment she'd found against her restraints, keeping her face carefully arranged in fear while her mind stayed cold and calculating. James and Victor had underestimated her in the most predictable way, assuming the same frightened woman who'd run from her wedding would break easily. They hadn't counted on what living with Ethan had taught her. Security protocols, pressure points, patience. Your husband should be arriving at the meeting point soon, James said, checking his watch. Once he signs over controlling interest in Cross Enterprises, Victor will decide what happens to you both. And you? She asked, stalling while the plastic restraint weakened. What do you get? His smile chilled her more than any threat. I get you back, plus enough money to disappear where no one will ever find us. As her captor outlined exactly how her husband would die when he came for her, Olivia worked the metal shard against her zip ties, smiling through split lips. You've made one critical mistake, she said, feeling the plastic begin to give. You think he's the dangerous one in our marriage. What would you hold on to survive your darkest moment? A memory? A promise? A person? When everything is stripped away, we discover what truly sustains us. For Ethan, the answer appeared with crystal clarity as his captors marched him toward an abandoned office building on the harbor's edge. He'd built an empire without breaking, faced down killers without blinking. But the sight of her torn wedding ring box on his doorstep brought him to his knees, a sound tearing from his throat that didn't sound human. Victor stood waiting in what had once been an executive suite, floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking dark water where bodies could disappear without trace. Cousin, Victor greeted him with false warmth. Family reunions are so moving. Where is she? Ethan demanded, straining against the men holding him. Victor's smile widened. Worried about your contract bride? How touching. She's with her ex-fiancé, the man she actually belongs with. Sign these papers, and perhaps I'll let you say goodbye before they leave the country. Ethan's laugh startled everyone in the room. You still don't understand what you're dealing with, do you? Enlighten me. You think you've captured a wolf and a lamb. Ethan's eyes reflected the harbor lights, cold and certain. But there are no lambs here. Only wolves. She killed a man to escape her prison. He burned down an empire to find her. And when they reunited, both realized there was no going back to who they'd been before. The zip tie snapped with a faint click masked by James's endless monologue about their future together. Olivia kept her hands positioned behind her, waiting for the perfect moment. In the corner, the youngest guard checked his phone, frowning at the screen. Sir, he called to James. There's a problem at the meeting point. James turned, irritated by the interruption. What problem? No communication from Mr. Cross's team for 15 minutes. And there's smoke visible from the harbor side. Her moment had arrived. As James strode toward the guard, Olivia launched herself from the chair, driving her elbow into the nearest guard's throat with all her strength. His gun clattered to the floor as he collapsed, gasping. She scooped it up and fired in one smooth motion, just as Ethan had taught her during those long practice sessions at the lake house. The second guard fell before he could draw his weapon. James turned, face contorting with rage and disbelief. You won't shoot me, he said, taking a step toward her. You don't have it in you. The warehouse echoed with the gunshot. James stared down at the spreading red stain on his chest, then back at her unwavering eyes. You never knew me at all, she said as he crumpled to the floor. Across the harbor, Ethan had created his own chaos. The moment Victor had presented the transfer papers, Ethan had triggered the signal, a small device disguised as his watch button that alerted both his security team and the federal agents waiting nearby. What followed was calculated violence. Ethan taking down two guards before the agents stormed in, Victor scrambling for escape as his carefully constructed plot collapsed around him. The warehouse. Ethan shouted to the lead agent as they secured Victor. She's in a warehouse on the East Docks. We've got teams heading there now, the agent assured him. But sir, there's something you should know. Ethan was already running to the waiting helicopter, his mind focused on a single purpose. Below him, the meeting point burned. Computers and paper were destroyed in the chaos. Victor's yacht ablaze where it had been moored nearby, a diversion created by Ethan's security team to divide their enemy's attention. The helicopter banked sharply over the harbor, searchlight cutting through darkness to illuminate a warehouse with open doors. His heart stopped at the sight of 3 bodies on the ground, until a lone figure emerged, looking up at the spotlight. Olivia, alive, free. The yacht burned against the night sky, flames reflecting off dark water as they held each other on the dock, 2 silhouettes becoming one against an inferno that consumed the past. Ethan crushed her against his chest, his hands trembling as they traced her face, her shoulders, confirming she was real and whole. "You're hurt," he said, thumb gently touching her split lip. "So are you." She touched the gash above his eye where a guard's weapon had connected. None of it mattered. They were alive, together, victorious. The safe house was 30 minutes away by car, the longest 30 minutes of their lives as adrenaline gave way to bone-deep need. They barely made it through the door before desperation overtook them. They came together with desperate intensity, her back against the safe house wall, his hands mapping her body as if convincing himself she was real. "I thought I'd lost you." He breathed against her neck. She answered by pulling him closer, erasing any space that dared exist between them. Their lovemaking was unlike anything either had experienced. Raw, honest, stripped of pretense or performance. Every touch affirmed life. Every kiss promised future. Every shared breath healed something broken in them both. Is there someone in your life you'd burn the world down to protect? Or someone who would do that for you? Share your most ride-or-die relationship in the comments. When we find that person, everything changes: priorities, perspectives, possibilities. Hours later, wrapped in tangled sheets and each other's arms, reality intruded with a phone call. Ethan answered on speaker, unwilling to let go of her even for a moment. "We've secured Victor and 3 associates," his security chief reported. "Federal agents are processing them now." "But sir, there's a complication." "What complication?" Ethan asked, fingers still tracing patterns on Olivia's bare shoulder. "The ledger Ms. Bennett saw, the physical evidence we need for the federal case. It's missing from all the locations we raided. Without it, the charges might not stick." As they lay, catching their breath, his security chief called with news that turned their victory hollow. The ledger Olivia had stolen, their only evidence against the conspiracy, had vanished from the vault. Without it, they remained targets with no way to prove what they knew. "We'll find it," Ethan said with more confidence than he felt. "Keep searching." He ended the call, meeting Olivia's worried eyes. Their battle wasn't over, just changed form. "We survived today," she reminded him, pressing her lips to his chest, above his heart. "We'll survive tomorrow too." For the first time in his life, Ethan believed in promises that weren't written on paper. Their 30-day contract expired with assassins still hunting them, forcing a decision. Walk away as agreed, or admit what both already knew. Their greatest vulnerability was each other. Dawn painted his penthouse in gold and shadow as they sat on opposite ends of the sofa. Contract between them. 30 days of signatures and timestamps documenting the evolution from strangers to something neither could name. Security teams had swept the building twice, confirming it was safe to return, at least temporarily. "It's midnight," Olivia said softly. 30 days exactly since I signed this." Ethan nodded, eyes fixed on the document that now seemed absurdly inadequate to describe what existed between them. The papers outlined a business arrangement, not the way her laugh made his chest tighten, or how her determination had transformed into his greatest source of strength. "Victor's lawyers are already challenging his arrest," he said, changing the subject. "Without the ledger, the case against him is circumstantial. They could release him within days. And James's associates will keep hunting for me," she added, fingers tracing the edges of their contract. "We're still targets." The unspoken question hung between them. What happens now? The terms were clear. After 30 days, she would disappear with new identity documents and enough money to start fresh. He would retain his company. The arrangement would end. "I can have your new papers ready by morning," he said, voice carefully neutral. "Passport, driver's license, bank accounts. You could be in Europe by tomorrow night." She nodded, something flickering in her eyes that he couldn't read. That was the agreement. It was silence stretched between them, filled with words neither knew how to say. The penthouse felt too large suddenly, too empty despite their presence. Outside, Dallas continued its nighttime rhythm, oblivious to the lives being reshaped 40 floors above. "I won't ask you to stay when there's still a target on my back," he said, voice rough with emotion. She took the contract and slowly tore it down the middle. "Good thing you're not asking then. I am telling." His head snapped up, eyes meeting hers with dangerous hope. "Telling what?" "That I'm staying." She moved closer on the sofa, bridging the careful distance between them. "That I'm not running anymore. Not from threats, not from feelings, and certainly not from you." His hand covered hers, warm and solid. "It won't be safe. When has anything worth having ever been safe?" She turned her palm up, interlacing their fingers. 30 days ago, I married a stranger for protection. Now I'm choosing to stay with the man The word caught in her throat, too significant to speak aloud in this fragile moment. "The man you what?" he prompted, his free hand cupping her face with a gentleness that still surprised her. "The man I love," she finished, voice steady despite the vulnerability of the admission. "That wasn't in the contract. It happened anyway. What would you risk for someone who started as a business arrangement but became everything? Would you walk away to protect them or stay to fight together? Let me know below." The moment we choose someone else's well-being over our own safety changes us forever. As Olivia and Ethan discovered that morning, contracts forgotten as they chose each other above all else. They spent the day rebuilding security protocols, contacting allies, and planning their next move against Victor's organization. The work was dangerous but oddly domestic, sharing coffee over strategy sessions, finishing each other's thoughts during conference calls, hands finding each other in quiet moments of connection. As evening approached, Olivia's phone chimed with a message that made her blood freeze. She wordlessly handed it to Ethan, watching his expression harden as he read. "We have your mother-in-law in Tulsa. A trade, her life for the ledger you stole." The message included an image, her mother bound to a chair, today's newspaper visible beside her. Fear and fury battled in Ethan's eyes as he looked up from the screen. "I never took the ledger," Olivia whispered. "I only saw it." They don't believe that. He was already reaching for his phone, and they've just made their final mistake. She married him to escape one dangerous man, only to learn that love made her twice as reckless and 3 times as lethal when someone threatened her new family. Oklahoma dust swirled around the abandoned gas station where it had all begun years ago. Her hometown dreams, her first mistake, and now potentially her last stand. Olivia checked her weapon for the 3rd time, the weight unfamiliar yet necessary in her hands. Beside her, Ethan studied satellite images of the property where her mother was being held, a foreclosed farmhouse 10 miles outside Tulsa, isolated enough for privacy, accessible enough for a swift approach. For men visible on thermal imaging, he reported, showing her the tablet screen. 2 inside with your mother, 2 patrolling the perimeter. And the leader? She asked, already knowing the answer. Not present yet, but he'll come for the exchange. Ethan's voice remained professional, but his eyes betrayed his rage. Cold, focused, dangerous. Cooper wants to witness this personally. Richard Cooper, James's business partner, Southwest Holdings executive, and the man whose name had appeared repeatedly in the ledger she glimpsed. The man who'd been pulling strings all along. Their plan was simple but risky. Olivia would approach with what appeared to be the ledger, creating a distraction while Ethan's team infiltrated from multiple entry points. Federal agents waited 5 miles away, ready to move once they confirmed her mother's safety. "Remember," Ethan said, adjusting her bulletproof vest with careful hands, "your only job is to keep them talking. Get visual confirmation your mother is unharmed. The team handles the rest." She nodded, focusing on a steady presence rather than the fear threatening to overwhelm her. In the months since their marriage, she discovered strengths she never knew she possessed, but this was different. This was her mother, her only family. "What if I can't find the words?" she whispered, a rare moment of doubt breaking through. Ethan's hands framed her face, his forehead pressing against hers. You faced down my entire board without blinking. You escaped professional kidnappers. You faced more in 30 days than most people face in a lifetime. His thumbs brushed her cheekbones. You'll find the words. The journey to the farmhouse passed in tense silence. As they neared the meeting point, Ethan squeezed her hand one last time before moving to position with his team. The decoy ledger felt heavy in her hands, a fake containing just enough real information to appear genuine. "Com check," came the security lead's voice through her concealed earpiece. "Clear," she responded, stepping from the vehicle onto Oklahoma soil, the place she'd once called home now transformed into a battlefield. The farmhouse door opened as she approached, revealing Cooper himself, tall, silver-haired, with the easy confidence of a man accustomed to winning. Behind him, her mother sat bound to a kitchen chair, looking thinner but mercifully unharmed. "Mrs. Cross." Cooper greeted her with mock politeness. "Or do you prefer Bennett? Identity seems so fluid in your world." "Let my mother go," Olivia replied, stopping at the distance they calculated. Close enough for dialogue, far enough for safety. "I brought what you asked for. Show me." She held up the ledger, letting him glimpse just enough of the contents to recognize names and numbers. "Release her first." Cooper laughed, the sound devoid of humor. "That's not how this works, my dear. You're not in a position to make demands. Neither are you." She stood taller, channeling Ethan's boardroom confidence. "You think I came alone? Look around, Richard. You're surrounded." His eyes narrowed, scanning the tree line where nothing visible moved, exactly as planned. Olivia took advantage of his momentary distraction to lock eyes with her mother, sending silent reassurance. Then she turned back to Cooper, shoulders straightening as she prepared to deliver the lines that would trigger the operation. "James never told you why I left him at the altar, did he?" she asked, voice carrying across the yard. "Cold feet," Cooper replied dismissively. "Women's hysteria." Olivia smiled, the expression cold and knowing. "I left because I saw the ledger. I saw your name linked to accounts in Cayman, Switzerland, Panama. I saw the payments to officials, the blackmail records. I saw everything." Cooper's face hardened. "Then you understand why you can't leave here alive." "No, Richard," she countered, giving the final signal phrase. "You're the one who doesn't understand. I married Ethan Cross. I'm not the same woman who ran away scared." The gunshot echoed across the open field as she screamed Ethan's name, watching him fall even as her mother broke free. She had seconds to choose: run to the man she loved or secure the evidence that would save them all. She sat beside his hospital bed for 3 days, realizing that the man she'd married for convenience had become the center of her world, and now she might lose him just as he opened his empire to include her. Monitors beeped in sterile rhythm as Olivia divided her attention between Ethan's unconscious form and a laptop where she coordinated with his executive team. The bullet had torn through his shoulder, missing vital organs but causing significant blood loss. The doctors called his condition stable but serious, words that meant everything and nothing as hours stretched into days without him opening his eyes. His security team had neutralized Cooper's men within minutes of the shot being fired. Her mother was safe, recovering in the VIP wing of the same hospital, guarded around the clock. Cooper himself was in federal custody, the real ledger, found hidden in a floor safe at James's apartment, providing enough evidence to ensure he'd never see freedom again. A complete victory, except for the most important part. Ethan still hadn't woken up. "The board needs a decision on the Singapore acquisition," his assistant said gently through the video call. "Should we postpone?" "No," Olivia replied, surprising herself with her certainty. "Proceed as Ethan planned. Send me the final documents for signature. I'll use the power of attorney he granted me." She ended the call, returning her attention to Ethan. His face looked younger in sleep, the lines of constant calculation smoothed away. She took his hand, running her thumb over knuckles that had defended her, touched her, changed her life in 30 impossible days. "I need you to wake up," she whispered, leaning close to his ear. Cross Enterprises is waiting for you. I'm waiting for you. Outside the window, Dallas continued its relentless pace. Skyscrapers gleaming in afternoon sun, his company logo visible on buildings that formed the skyline. The empire he'd built, now temporarily in her hands. A month ago, she'd been planning simple weddings for hopeful brides. Now she was approving multi-million-dollar transactions and coordinating security for a multinational corporation. The transformation should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like stepping into a role she'd been rehearsing for all along. When his eyes finally opened, her name was the first word on his lips. She kissed him with exquisite gentleness, mindful of bandages and tubes, pouring 30 days of transformation into the touch of her lips on his. How long? He asked, voice rough from disuse. 3 days. She pressed the call button for the nurse. Your company's still standing. Your cousin's associates are in custody. My mother's safe. A ghost of his familiar smile touched his lips. And you? Are you safe? I am now. She stroked his hair back from his forehead. We all are. The next hours brought doctors, updates, and cautious optimism. Ethan was healing, though recovery would take time. As evening settled over the hospital, they finally found themselves alone, the room dim to comfortable shadows. The doctor delivered the news with clinical detachment. The bullet had caused complications they hadn't anticipated. Ethan might recover completely, or he might never regain full use of his right arm. Does this change things? He asked when they were alone, eyes searching hers for hesitation that wasn't there. Have you ever realized the exact moment someone went from being part of your life to being your whole world? Share that turning point in the comments. For Olivia, that moment crystallized as she looked at the man who'd begun as her escape route and become her destination. The only thing that would change things is if you try to face this alone, she said, perching carefully on the edge of his bed. Which I won't allow. Bossy, he murmured, his good hand finding hers. You've been running my company for 3 days and already giving orders. I learned from the best. She leaned forward, pressing her forehead to his. Besides, you need someone to tell you when you're being stubborn. I don't recall that clause in our contract, he teased. We tore that up, remember? This is a new arrangement. What are the terms? His eyes, clear despite the medication, held hers. Forever, she said simply. Non négociable. A year after she ran from her wedding, she stood at another altar, this time with bare feet by choice, facing a man whose heart she'd rebuilt alongside her own. Their wedding overlooked the spot where he'd found her in the rain. The Cross Tower Gardens transformed into an enchanted forest where corporate power mingled with her hometown warmth. Fairy lights twinkled among imported trees, creating a ceiling of stars above guests who represented their merged worlds. Olivia's mother, fully recovered and radiant, sat in the front row beside Ethan's most trusted board members. Security teams, disguised as waitstaff, maintained a protective perimeter, a necessary precaution even now. Old threats had been neutralized, but success created new ones daily. In the years since their ordeal, Olivia and Ethan had built something neither had imagined possible that rainy night. His recovery had been slow but complete. Physical therapy restoring function to his injured arm, her presence restoring something more essential to his spirit. Together, they'd restructured Cross Enterprises, integrating her vision for community investment with his business acumen. They could have married quietly, legally making permanent what they already knew was unbreakable. Instead, they chose to celebrate openly, defying anyone who might try to separate them, honoring the journey that had brought them here. Olivia wore no shoes, her bare feet connecting her to the earth as she walked toward Ethan. Her dress, ivory silk that caught the light with each movement, bore little resemblance to the soaked wedding gown he'd first seen her in. This garment represented choice, not escape. Ethan waited at the altar, the scar visible above his collar a reminder of all they'd survived. When he took her hands, his touch carried a year's worth of memories. Gentle moments and fierce ones, quiet understandings and passionate discoveries. A year ago, I offered you a business arrangement, he said, voice carrying across the gathered guests. Today I'm offering you everything I am and everything I'll be. No expiration date, no exit clauses. Tears filled her eyes as she responded with the vows they'd written together. I choose you, Ethan, not from desperation, but from certainty. Not for protection, but for partnership. The woman who ran into your car that night was looking for escape. The woman standing before you now has found her home. They exchanged rings, platinum bands engraved with the coordinates where they'd met, where he'd been injured, where they'd first admitted love. A geography of their journey mapped in precious metal. I now pronounce you husband and wife, the officiant declared, though both knew the true binding had occurred months ago, in hospital rooms and board meetings, in quiet moments of truth and loud moments of defense. The reception celebrated until dawn, music and laughter healing the final wounds of their difficult beginning. As guests departed, they retreated to the penthouse that had become their shared domain, transformed from his sterile showplace into their warm home. He traced the scar on her shoulder, a match to his own from the bullet that nearly separated them, before following it with his lips. No more contracts, he whispered against her skin. Just promises? She answered by showing him exactly how thoroughly she intended to keep hers. Their honeymoon suite overlooked the city they'd conquered together. His financial empire, now purposefully directed by her compassionate vision, her community dreams empowered by his resources. Outside, dawn painted Dallas in gold and promise, the same colors that had filled the penthouse the morning they'd torn up their original contract. Mrs. Cross, he murmured against her neck as they stood by the window. Mr. Cross, she replied, leaning back against his chest, his arms strong around her waist. Still happy with our arrangement? Beyond measure. His lips found a sensitive spot behind her ear. Though I think we've moved well past arrangement territory. She turned in his arms, studying the face that had become her favorite landscape. No longer the cold mask she'd first encountered, but expressive, warm, alive with possibility. What would you call it then? She asked, fingertips tracing the line of his jaw. Life, he answered simply. Our life. What's your definition of true partnership? Is it standing together in danger, supporting each other's growth, or something else entirely? Share your wisdom in the comments. The strongest bonds often begin in unexpected places, convenience becoming necessity, necessity becoming choice, choice becoming love. Their story began with a white dress in the rain and a cold business proposition. It ended, or rather, truly began, with another white dress, another promise, but this time with a fundamental difference. The first arrangement was built on what they were running from. This one was built on what they'd run toward. The discovery that love isn't a weakness to exploit, but a strength to cultivate. A truth more valuable than all the wealth they now shared. In the morning, they would return to building their empire, facing challenges side by side. But tonight belonged to them alone. Two people who had found each other in the storm and decided, against all odds, to stay. I love you, she whispered against his lips. No terms or conditions. I love you, he replied, the words no longer foreign on his tongue. Now and always. Some contracts bind with signatures and legal language. Others bind with scars shared, battles fought, and promises kept. Theirs was both. Business transformed to pleasure. Arrangement evolved to commitment. Strangers become essential to each other. The arrangement had ended. Their story had just begun.